Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to mypillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. mypillow.com. Promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Welcome in. Glad to have you spend a few minutes of your day with me. Here's what we're going to be covering today. Venezuelan authorities have been ordered to find and arrest anyone involved in supporting the military operations that led to the arrest of Nicolas Maduro. A state of emergency decree issued Saturday, published yesterday, orders police to immediately begin the national search and capture of everyone involved in the promotion or support for the armed attack by the United States, according to the text of the decree. Now, meanwhile, Venezuela's acting president says she wants to cooperate with the U.S., saying she wants her country to move towards a balanced and respectful relationship. With Governor Tim Walz out, Democrats in Minnesota are urging longtime Senator Amy Klobuchar to jump into the blue-leaning state's race for governor in the wake of his announcement. Governor Walz will end his 2026 re-election bid amid the political fallout from a massive fraud scandal. At least he knew when to get out. I'm impressed that he can make that decision. Senator Mark Kelly, meanwhile, could get demoted and have his military pay docked as punishment for participating in a video with 5 other congressional Dems who urged service members to refuse illegal orders. You remember this? Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says there's accountability to be had.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills, but I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
Well, the fallout from President Trump's dramatic operation in Venezuela is already spreading, and now we're seeing just how nervous the remnants of the Maduro regime really are. Over the weekend, Venezuelan authorities issued a state of emergency decree. They have ordered the police and security forces to, quote, hunt down and arrest anyone accused of supporting the U.S. military operation that led to the arrest of their former president. According to the decree, which was released yesterday, police are to immediately begin the national search and capture of anyone involved in promoting or supporting what the regime calls an armed attack by the United States. Now, what's missing from that order? Clarity on the charges, due process, legal definitions. In other words, a familiar playbook in Venezuela. One of the reasons that their former president is no longer in power. Now, as the crackdown unfolds, Maduro himself appeared in a New York courtroom yesterday, just days after U.S. forces arrested he and his wife during the weekend operation. That was just amazing. I was going to say can't believe, but I can believe that our military is capable of that. I just can't believe what a precision operation they ran. I mean, all the details were involved. I'm just blown away with it. The Justice Department, though, has charged both with narco-terrorism and related offenses, accusing the former regime of operating as a criminal enterprise tied to international drug trafficking. Standing before the court, Maduro declared, "I am innocent. I am not guilty of anything that is written here." Now, that's a line we've heard before, isn't it? From cartel bosses, warlords, dictators who spent years immune from accountability. Well, that immunity is gone now. He is in a court of law in a United States courtroom. Back in Venezuela, the response has been swift and pretty telling. With Maduro removed, his longtime ally, Delcy Rodriguez, has been sworn in as the interim president. Ms. Rodriguez has spent years as Maduro's right-hand enforcer, serving as vice president since 2018. She now inherits a country that is on edge and a regime scrambling to maintain control. Even as she condemned the U.S. operation, Ms. Rodriguez struck a noticeably different tone yesterday in her public remarks after President Trump had really kind of issued some warnings. She called for a balanced and respectful relation with Washington and inviting cooperation under international law. Now, that's diplomatic language. It comes after issuing an internal order, as I mentioned a minute ago, of rounding anyone up suspected of sympathizing with the U.S. So which is it? Is she going to hunt down people who helped and apprehend them, or is she going to cooperate with the U.S.? That contradiction tells you everything you need to know about what's going on in Venezuela. And let's be clear about what this decree really represents. This isn't about national security. It's about fear. Fear that Venezuelans who have long been crushed under socialist misrule may quietly support Maduro's removal. Fear that military officers, bureaucrats, and civilians may have helped or cheered or supported the operation. Fear that the illusion of unity is cracking. History tells us something important. Authoritarian regimes don't launch mass crackdowns when they're confident, right? They do it when they feel exposed, when they feel weak. Now, over the weekend, government-organized demonstrations appeared in Caracas, featuring supporters holding cartoonish-like dolls from the state-approved TV program Super Bigot, a propaganda caricature glorifying Maduro. It was political theater, meant to project loyalty and outrage. But there's a whole different story going on kind of on the down low, as a lot of people in Venezuela are ready for freedom. And you saw those celebrations too. You saw a lot of those celebrations here in the United States from people who have fled Venezuela over the last few decades. So what comes next? Right now, I think you could probably say that Venezuela is in a holding pattern. Maduro is going to face U.S. justice. Rodriguez is attempting to steady the ship. Security forces are ordered to silence dissent, and there's going to be unrest. There's probably going to be some chaos. The Venezuelan people, many of whom have fled poverty, hunger, repression, are watching closely. This moment will define what comes next and what the future is. Will the interim government double down on repression? Or will pressure, internal and international, force real reform? Will Ms. Rodriguez come to the realization that the world is watching and that her people want to be free? And if she wants to remain in power, then she'd better get on board. Because what she could potentially face is not being arrested by Donald Trump, but being overthrown by her own country. And what's clear is this. The era of untouchable socialist strongmen in Venezuela just ended with the capture and arrest of Maduro. And the reaction we're seeing, the arrest, the emergency decrees, the threats, it looks a lot like a regime that knows it's running out of time, and she's trying to decide which route she's going to take. And the world, again, is watching. One other quick note here. While President Trump was making headlines, and frankly history, by capturing this dictator, Maduro, let's rewind to 2020. When then-candidate Joe Biden mocked Donald Trump, saying he, quotes, admires thugs and dictators like Nicolas Maduro. He tried to paint himself as the one who would stand for democracy and with the Venezuelan people. Joe Biden did. Fast forward to now. Donald Trump, the one who got Maduro on a U.S. aircraft, blindfolded and facing terrorism and drug trafficking charges. Meanwhile, Biden's comment is being roasted across social media as the ultimate this age like milk comment. And to be clear, this wasn't just a slap on the wrist. Maduro was yanked out in a pre-dawn operation while the world was asleep. The left, they're in meltdown mode still. Some Democrats are even denouncing the capture, calling it unlawful and unwise. Former Vice President Kamala Harris is getting blowback for slamming the operation, claiming it wasn't properly authorized. Now, remind me again, who's defending democracy here? Senator Tommy Tuberville nailed it. Democrats don't actually stand on principles. It's all about politics, power, and opposing Trump no matter what he does. When Trump talks tough and backs it up, they suddenly have a problem with dictators being brought to justice. Even former Bernie Sanders ally Jamal Green, now politically independent, called it like it is. He said Biden watched as Maduro slaughtered and oppressed his people and let millions flood our southern border until the guise of asylum, costing Americans billions, he said. Trump swooped in and took him out of the country altogether. That's called action. And he's right. And here's the kicker. It was the Obama-Biden administration that originally put a bounty on Maduro's head. Biden even increased it, but when Trump doubles it and actually follows through, suddenly it's a problem. It's not your fault that losing weight is getting harder and harder. You're eating better, you're moving more, but your body isn't responding the way it used to. That's not willpower, that's metabolism. And believe me, I've learned so much about the metabolism from the folks at PhD Weight Loss, and it's made a huge difference in my life. Joey Hudson here. For many people, years of dieting quietly slows the metabolic system down, so the harder you try, the less progress you see. At PhD Weight Loss, they help people identify what's actually blocking fat loss, and they fix the root cause, not just count calories. If you want to understand why your body isn't cooperating, call PhD Weight Loss now and mention Fix My Weight Loss to unlock the New Year's special. It's free, it's personalized, and it could explain everything. Call 864-644-1900 and say Fix My Weight Loss. That's 864-644-1900 and say Fix My Weight Loss to get started today. You can also find them online at myphdweightloss.com. That's myphdweightloss.com. Start the new year off right and fix your weight loss. Well, there was breaking news yesterday when we learned that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is calling it quits after the uproar that was created when people started uncovering the fraud, the massive fraud that's been going on right under his nose during his administration, and he has looked the other way. Well, he couldn't look the other way after there was a national outcry. When Nick Shirley's videos went viral and millions and millions and millions of people watched, Tim Walz couldn't ignore it anymore. So he announced, I was going to say it was a bit of a surprise, but I guess it really wasn't. I mean, no way he was going to survive this. So he announced yesterday that he would be suspending his campaign. He's withdrawing. He will not be seeking re-election to the governor's mansion in Minnesota this year. Democrats now are urging longtime Senator Amy Klobuchar to jump in, to jump in and to take over, to offer herself for this office as Walz is ending his re-election bid. Klobuchar, who was re-elected in 2024 to a fourth 6-year term in the U.S. Senate, is receiving calls urging her to run for governor, according to sources in the Minnesota Democrat Party. Sources are telling Fox in Minnesota that Klobuchar is considering making a gubernatorial bid but has yet to make any final decision. Now, according to the story, Governor Walz met Sunday with Senator Klobuchar to discuss his decision to drop his re-election bid. Klobuchar didn't comment on her future political plans in a statement that she made yesterday, but the senator, commenting on the governor's move to combat the fraud scandal full-time rather than to seek another office or term in office, she said Governor Walz made the difficult decision to focus on his job and the challenges facing our state rather than campaigning and running for re-election. Now, my only thought there is, had he been focusing on his job rather than following Kamala Harris all over the country last year running for vice president, maybe some of this would not have happened. But then I think back about some of Nick Shirley's videos and some of the information that we've received since then and realize this has been going on for years. So he's had ample time to address this, and he's just ignored it all these years. Senator Klobuchar, who is currently number 3 in Senate Democrat leadership, faces hurdles to rise higher in her party leadership, unless somebody dies, literally. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is the top Democrat in the upper chamber. He's not expected to leave his post. Senate Minority Leader, Whip Dick Durbin, is retiring from Congress. That will leave an opening to fill a leadership within the Democrat ranks. Senator Brian Schatz from Hawaii is expected heir apparent to that position, though. So it doesn't look like that Senator Klobuchar would even be considered by the Democrats. Before serving in the Senate, Ms. Klobuchar was elected twice as county attorney in Hennepin County, Minnesota's most populous and where most of the fraud is taking place. She also ran unsuccessfully for the Democrat Party's 2020 presidential nomination, you may recall. The announcement by the governor, the 2024 Democrat vice presidential nominee, came, of course, because of the criticism of this fraud. I mean, there's no way you can make the case that you're doing your job as governor when that much fraud has been exposed. In his statement, he said, "As I reflected on this moment with my family and my team over the holidays, I came to the conclusion that I can't give a political campaign my all. Every minute I spend defending my own political interests would be a minute I can't spend defending the people of Minnesota against the criminals who prey on our generosity and the cynics who prey on our differences." He went on to say, "So I've decided to step out of this race and let others worry about the election while I focus on the work in front of me for the next year." Now, at the time of his statement, he made it clear he would not be answering questions then, but he said that he would return maybe even today to answer. Actually, he said his quote was, "to take all your questions." Governor Walz launched his bid for a third 4-year term. There's not, to my knowledge, I guess there's not term limits in Minnesota for the governor. He launched his re-election campaign soon after the 2024 disaster of running for vice president. In recent weeks, he's been facing a barrage of the incoming political fire, not only from President Trump, but other Republicans and Democrats around the country. More than 90 people, most from Minnesota's large Somali community, have been charged since 2022 in what has been described as the nation's largest COVID-era scheme. How much money has been stolen through alleged money laundering operations involving fraudulent meals and housing programs, and now, most recently, the daycare centers, Medicaid services, we don't know. It's still being tabulated, and we may never know. But the U.S. Attorney in Minnesota said the scope of the fraud could exceed $1 billion and rise as high as $9 billion. Prosecutors said some of the dozens that have already pleaded guilty in the case used the money to buy luxury cars, real estate, jewelry, international vacations, and some of the funds also sent overseas and potentially into the hands of Islamic terrorists. Walz told reporters last month, he said, "This is on my watch. I'm accountable for this, and more importantly, I am the one that will fix it." We'll see. Time will tell whether or not Tim Walz fixes this before he leaves office in a year. He did take actions to stop some of these suspected fraudulent payments and ordered an outside audit of Medicaid billing in the state just a few weeks ago. Now, this scandal has been brewing for months, but it went viral just in the last 2 weeks following the release of 23-year-old Nick Shirley's YouTube content, who alleged the widespread fraud at the Somali-run daycare centers. Just days later, President Trump, his administration, froze federal childcare funding to Minnesota, later called for a total accounting throughout the nation. Every state has to report how their funds are being used. Republican Governors Association Communications Director Courtney Alexander charged in a statement that Governor Walz's failed leadership is emblematic of Minnesota Democrats' agenda, and whoever Democrats choose to replace Walz at the top of the ticket will need to defend years of mismanagement and misplaced priorities. Now, the Democrat Governors Association chair, Governor Andy Beshear of Kentucky, said in a statement, "No matter who decides to run or how much national Republicans want to spend, the DGA remains very confident Minnesotans will elect another strong Democrat governor this November." Now, when you say elect another strong Democrat governor, you're assuming that you've had a strong Democrat governor, and Tim Walz has proved to be anything but that. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you could trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. On the text line, Faye says, seems Miss Green has become a useful idiot for perhaps the Democrats. Hope not to see her again. Her fiancé will need to be a strong man to keep his job. Time will tell. Of course, Faye is talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene, whose yesterday was her last day in the U.S. House of Representatives. Albert says Democrats have a real messaging problem. They say we're against dictatorship. However, they support the dictator of Venezuela. Democrats are, for the most part, a sick group of people. I can't argue with you on that, Albert. So let's get back on Venezuela and how things are. We've talked a lot about the capture and arrest of Maduro. We've talked a lot about him being in New York yesterday and the arraignment. But how are things actually in the country itself now? The new interim leader yesterday offered a conciliatory message after a U.S. military operation over the weekend, of course, captured her former boss. The acting leader, Delcy Rodriguez, she was Maduro's vice president since 2018, said in a statement, quote, "We invite the U.S. government to collaborate with us on an agenda of cooperation oriented towards shared development within the framework of international law to strengthen lasting community coexistence." That's a long statement, a lot of big words in there. I think she's saying that once she got Trump's message, that she wants to cooperate now in order to keep her office. The country is now, according to the now acting president, in that same statement, quote, "moving towards balanced and respectful international relations between the United States and Venezuela, and between Venezuela and other countries in the region, premised on sovereign equality and non-interference." Rodriguez, also a socialist who served under Maduro as his deputy leader before his arrest, mentioned President Trump in her statement and referred to former President Maduro as the Venezuelan president. She's still referring to him as the president, although he's not president. He's a former president. She said, "President Donald Trump, our peoples and our region deserve peace and dialogue, not war. This has always been President Nicolas Maduro's message, and it is the message of all Venezuela right now." She said, "This is the Venezuela I believe in and have dedicated my life to. I dream of a Venezuela where all good Venezuelans can come together." Now, the Venezuelan Supreme Court over the weekend named her as the acting leader following this dramatic operation by U.S. forces. He and his wife, Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, were arraigned yesterday in New York City in a federal courtroom. Rodriguez's first comments to the U.S. were a bit more defiant. She had a defiant tone as she deemed the U.S. operation to be a violation of international law in her initial response, and said that Washington needed to return Maduro to Venezuela. As time went on, her attitude changed a bit. Because Sunday evening, President Trump told The Atlantic that Rodriguez needs to act in accordance with U.S. national interests and warned her about consequences if she does not. He said if she doesn't do what's right, she is going to pay a very big price, probably bigger than Maduro, Trump said in the interview. The president told the outlet that removing Maduro was needed for national security purposes, adding that regime change, anything you want to call it, is better than what you have right now. And look, the Venezuelan people have supported that, those who are allowed to. President Trump said rebuilding is not a bad thing in Venezuela's case. It's a totally failed country. It's a country that's a disaster in every way. Now, over the weekend, President Trump, in his speech to the U.S., said that we would aid in the running of Venezuela. When asked during a press conference who would be running the country until a transition of power can take place, the president said, the people are standing right behind me, mentioning Marco Rubio and the generals who were involved in the military operation. Now, Secretary of State Rubio was put on the hot seat by George Stephanopoulos over the weekend. Stephanopoulos trying to push him on that idea that the U.S. was running the country. He said, Marco Rubio said that the U.S. administration would not govern Venezuela day to day other than enforcing an existing oil quarantine on the country. Now, according to the indictment that was filed with the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York, Maduro and 5 co-conspirators were charged with narco-terrorism, conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, and weapons offenses. And before his capture, Maduro had long stressed that he was not involved in drug smuggling or any other illegal activities, saying that he wanted peace with the United States. We all knew that that was not the total truth, though. Maybe he did want peace with the United States, but he was a drug lord. So we'll see how Ms. Rodriguez, if she truly means that she's going to cooperate with the U.S. Senator Mark Kelly could get demoted and have his military pay docked as punishment for participating in a video with 5 of his colleagues in the U.S. House and Senate. Remember that video that circulated a few weeks ago, back before Christmas? He's facing a review of his military rank because the video, you may recall, was encouraging the rank and file in the military to ignore President Trump's orders, saying that if the orders were not legal, you did not have to conform. You remember that? Well, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has a different idea. Hegseth said the department has initiated retirement grade determination proceedings with reduction in Senator Kelly's retired grade resulting in a corresponding reduction in retired pay. Kelly will have a month to respond to the Department of War's actions, and Secretary Hegseth will finalize the process within 45 days, according to the announcement. Secretary Hegseth contends that Kelly's conduct was seditious in nature and stressed that the senator is still subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The Secretary of War directed Navy Secretary John Phelan to conduct a review of Kelly's rank. He also said that the censure letter will be placed in Kelly's permanent military personnel file. The letter included a threat of criminal prosecution as well. The censure letter read, if you continue to engage in conduct prejudicial to good order and discipline, you may subject yourself to criminal prosecution or further administrative action. Now, as you know, Mark Kelly is a retired Navy captain, a former NASA astronaut. He had joined Senator Alyssa Slotkin, Representative Jason Crow, Maggie Goodlander, Chris DeLuzio, and Chrissy Houlihan in making the controversial video that was pushed out back in November on social media. It was viewed by millions. Of the 6 lawmakers who shot the video, Senator Kelly was the only one in line for potential punishment as a retired service member collecting his pension. Crow is an Army veteran who won a Bronze Star for his actions during the Iraq War. DeLuzio and Kelly served in the Navy, and Houlihan served in the Air Force, while Goodlander spent 11 years as an intelligence officer in the Navy Reserve. Slotkin is a former CIA analyst. I think Mark Kelly may have gotten the message, though. If not, he better, because I think Pete Hegseth is serious about this. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.